Hey VC, this is Mark Wald, and for this moment, I'm your Huckleberry. I want to first give a shout out to DJ Kendo, to the Vinyl Guru, to Mazzy of Norman Mazlov, and Rachel of Music Ma'am for your warm welcome to me and the community. I really appreciated your comments on my last video. Thank you so much, and thank you all for your welcome. I really didn't understand when I started getting into this how deep the community really is, and it's really nice to see that. So today it's going to be a short one, and I'm going to do sort of a recent find, a lucky strike, and a little bit about the history of how I got into record collecting and the first records that I started with. So let's just dive right in. So the recent find I have, this is, this is Fleetwood Mac Rumors, great album. It's just an incredible album. I really like it. And this is a sealed copy, and it has the textured cover. So this is the first pressing. There's a label on here that says, basically it's from Chicago, an old record store that doesn't exist there now anymore. But that means it's probably a Jacksonville pressing. So that's about all I know about this. I'm kind of excited about it. I'm not really sure what the value of it is, or if there's any way to tell more about the record without actually opening it, which I'm not going to do. So if anybody out there has any information about something like that, I would love to hear from you. But this is my most recent find. I think I paid like 25 bucks for this, which I think is well worth it. So that was kind of fun to find. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about then was a lucky strike. This has a history to it. When I was a kid, we traveled by motorhome once in a while, and in the motorhome we had an 8-track cassette player. And there's probably 4 or 5 tapes that we had. There's only a few that I liked, and one of which was Neil Young's Time Fades Away. Not a real big album for him. In fact, I don't think he even liked this album. And that's sort of why this story takes off in a different direction, because as I began to look for, Neil Young started releasing his catalog on CD, and so I started buying up a bunch of it. And I looked for this one, and he didn't release it. So I think he claimed he didn't find the master, but they're releasing it again now, so they must have found it. But I don't think he liked the album. I loved it. I listened to it all the time, and I really wanted to find it. So I went to a record store. This is maybe 15 years ago. And yeah, about 15 years ago. And so I went to a record store and asked about it to see if I could find it on vinyl. And they didn't have any in, and they said it might even be a collector's item, so it might be worth some money. If they do have it, it might not be cheap. So I just kind of gave up on it. About a month later, I went down to Ashland, Oregon to see the Shakespearean Festival down there. Quiet little town. Walking down the street with my daughter, we used to go every year to see the plays down there. And there was a little alley next to the movie theater in town there. And down the alley was a sandwich board that it was sort of a little a resale shop of some kind. And I'd never seen it in the years I'd been there before. And so let's go check it out. So we walked down there, and looking around at some interesting stuff, nothing really big, but there was a box of records on the floor. And I went through it, and sure enough, an almost mint copy of Time Fades Away is in that box for $5. And it even includes in it, and I'll show you this, the original lyric sheet. And information that was in there as well. So to me, it was just a really great find. I was really excited to get this. And at this point, I'm still not collecting records. I just went and I bought the album, took it home, and had it digitized. So, but that was, I guess this is the first record I bought. I'm one of those guys who sold all of my albums in the 80s. So, maybe in the 90s. Anyway, so, but I had that digitized and listened to it, and it was great. It's a good album. So But about 5 years ago, a friend of mine, he's a rock climber and he's a musician. He plays in, he had his own little sort of progressive jazz rock band. He played in a Steely Dan cover band. And he and I went on many rock climbing trips together. We went to a lot of music shows together. Really fun guy. And he was taking off for South America for a year. And this is in November 5 years ago. He came to my birthday. So I was having a small gathering of friends, and he walks in the door with a box of about 150 albums and goes back out and brings in a cheap record player and says, these are yours. I'm going to give these to you. I'm going to go away for a year, and I just think you should have these. So they're yours. Happy birthday. And so I didn't really have time then to look through them, and I said thank you, and I love this guy. So he and I were supposed to go see Zappa Does Zappa about 2 weeks later. And before that, about 10 days later, he was going on a rock climbing trip. He's going on a solo trip up Kolchak Peak in Washington State, and which is more like ice and snow and rock climbing. So about 2 days before the show we were supposed to go to, I got a call from his girlfriend. She was very concerned because she hadn't heard from Adam yet, and he hadn't returned. And Adam didn't return. He took a fall of about 1,000 feet. His body wasn't found until the spring when the snow melted. And they confirmed that he had fallen and where he had fallen. And it was a great loss. He was a dear, dear friend of mine, and I really cared a lot about him. It took me a while to start diving into his record collection. But it was wonderful to do that because I got to kind of see him again through the eyes of his collection and the music that he loved, a lot of which I also loved. So I want to show you, these are then the first albums really in my collection. And it was after that I started listening to these that I started to feel the album covers in my hand and the warmth of the music on the record player that I started to buy records again. So I want to show a few albums that I got from him. Start with Tower of Power, Bump City. This is 1972, I think. And I actually, one of the first big concerts I went to when I was probably 12 or 13 was a band called Cold Blood. They were a blues band. And the opening band was Tower of Power. And they were touring this album. It hadn't been released yet. And Tower of Power blew Cold Blood off the stage. They were so astounding. I walked out of that theater just completely blown away. My little 13-year-old brain was going haywire. The band was so tight. The horn section was so amazing. Great album, great music. Fun to have this again. Moving along, he had, like I said, he had 150 albums, but I'm just going to show a few. Prince 1999, first or original pressing. Great album, good taste in music. Steely Dan's Pretzel Logic, and I got to remember a show of his that I got to see where he was in the Steely Dan cover band. And Pretzel Logic is a great album. I had this as a kid, Parker's Band, great song. Ricky Don't Lose That Number, of course, is a great song. The title tune, Pretzel Logic. This is a great album. I really like Steely Dan, especially the old stuff, really good stuff. So it was great to get this. But the gems in here, he and I were both huge Radiohead fans. We talked about Radiohead a lot. And he has almost all the albums except Pablo Honey. He didn't have that. Pablo Honey came out in 1993. The Bends came out in 95. This is first pressing from the UK on Parlophone label, and also, I don't know if you can see this, but it's a promo copy. So I don't think Adam had any idea what a first pressing was. I'm sure he's not really a record collector in that sense of the word. I don't think he knew what he had here at all. I think he just enjoyed the music. He didn't even take that good a care of the covers, to be honest. But he had that, and then he had OK Computer, which came out in 97. And the band Radiohead at this point, this album was very popular. It kind of I don't know how to say it, maybe the band got a little out of balance. They had a hard time trying to follow this album up. And so they didn't put out another album for 3 more years. This album was really popular. They were kind of leaning away from alternative rock at this point, experimenting with some other stuff, but it was still guitar rock kind of music. And then 3 years later, they came out with the album that really kind of blew me away, Kid A. Kid A, the music on here is like a compilation of, or a mixture of electronica, art rock, classical music, krautrock. It's got a little bit of everything in here. It's just an astounding record. It really takes off in new directions. It was just a different kind of music. I think it was even split in terms of, like, I think Rolling Stone thought this was the best album of the decade. And a lot of publications said that about this album, but I think that the people who were listening to Radiohead were a little bit split. It was such a different kind of music. I thought it was amazing. It did so well that their next album came out a year later in 2001, Amnesiac, which was just basically recordings from the same recording session that Kid A came from. They had made so much good music at that point that they just had a second album to do. Both of these are double album, 10-inch pressings. And all of these are on Parlophone labels. They're all first pressings. So I was just kind of blown away as I started getting into this stuff when I started collecting to see what I had. Hail to the Thief, first pressing Parlophone. In Rainbows, I think this is a first pressing US. He didn't have the UK version of this. But he also had Tom York's The Eraser first pressing. Great albums, a great start to my collection, and listening to these and owning these and playing around with these really sparked my interest in buying vinyl again. Even so, when I started buying vinyl, I was really buying to listen. I wasn't really considering myself a collector. So I feel it's too bad I didn't know I wanted to collect, because I gathered collections from friends, bought collections, kept the ones I liked that I knew I would listen to, and sold the rest. And there's a bunch of stuff that has slipped through my fingers that I would love to have again, but that's the way it is. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. Looking forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.